everyone. This is Dr. Belinda Wilkerson, also known as Dr. B of Steps to the Future, coming to you with this week's College Conversations. So, you want to be an engineer. I am so thrilled to have the guest that we have with us this evening, and I think you'll be really thrilled to hear his story and his journey to becoming an engineer. So, everyone, join me in welcoming our guest, Jalen McGee.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Jalen, for being here. So, everyone, let me just tell you a little bit about Jalen as we get started. So, Jalen is currently a student at North Carolina State University. He will be graduating this December,
Yes.
and he has a fascinating story. And I really want people to be able to hear his story because we hear students, when I talk with students, they're always talking about what they would like to do in the future, and so many students want to become an engineer, and sometimes I don't think they realize all that goes into that. So I thought it'd be really good to have a young person on who is on the cusp of starting his career as an engineer. So Jalen, first tell me a little bit about how you got interested in engineering.
Yes. So I initially got interested in engineering because of my parents. They enrolled me in a robotics program when I was in middle school, and it was at Duke University. And at that robotics program, we built Lego robots, and we had to program them with software and make them work. And it was a surreal experience for me, creating something that works and that works on its own. And we had to program the robots to like follow a line and do these different directives. And that really is what made me interested in engineering initially. And then after I'd returned to school, I think this was a summer program. After I'd returned to school, I was doing pretty well in math. And one of my teachers said, you're pretty good. You consider engineering. So that was the two things that really came together to spark my interest in engineering, really in middle school.
Okay, that's great. And I think it's so important that you talked about that someone recognized your gifts early and
Yes.
gave you the support that you needed. And that's something a lot of students don't get. So for all the adults that are out there listening, for all the teachers, all the counselors, all the aunts and cousins and what have you, if you know a young person and you see some gifts and talents in that person, please encourage them. So
Mhm.
Joel, and I was looking at some footage of you at a when you were in high school.
Mhm.
And I thought that story about what you were trying to raise funds for was absolutely fascinating. So tell me a little bit about that. Tell the audience a little bit about that.
Yes. Well, when I was in high school, my original intention was to study biomedical engineering. And that kind of led me to prosthetics because I thought it was very interesting how you could take someone who was handicapped and use engineering to literally improve their life to the point where their handicap is not even noticeable. So that's what initially sparked my interest in biomedical engineering, learning about how you can make a prosthetic, how you can make a smart prosthetic that not only attached to a person, but actually was smart and could recognize some of the motions that the person was trying to achieve. That was really, it was crazy to me. So I wanted to understand how I could do that. So I wanted to raise funds to get a prosthetic limb to kind of work on and tinker with when I was in high school. So.
Were you able to get the funds?
Not all of them. So I wasn't able to get all the funds. So instead of going as far as working with a prosthetic, I worked on a computer, so a self-assembled computer that I worked on in high school, and I was also able to get an internship with a local nonprofit in high school called Triangle E-Cycling, where they would take donated computers and they hire high school students to refurbish them, and then they give them away to school. So that was kind of what I got to do as an alternative.
That's fantastic. For those of you that are just joining in with us, we're talking with Jalen McGee, who is in his senior year at North Carolina State University. He will be graduating in December. So I know that you're graduating. Your degree is going to be in industrial and systems engineering. Can you tell people a little bit about what that type of engineering is?
Yes. So industrial and systems engineering is about the business of engineering. So we focus a lot on how can we achieve these different business outcomes by twisting and turning and tweaking the income, the inputs that we put in. So we focus a lot on optimizing profits for companies, how we can tweak different inputs based on constraints. So say we have a time constraint and we're trying to manufacture 1,000 units of some product. How can we optimize how we use our time and how we use our machines to meet our business goals? So that is the kind of basic level of industrial engineering. And within the discipline itself, there are several sub-disciplines, like several students go on to work in healthcare, several students go on to work in manufacturing, and students like myself, we go on to work in software. So it's a varied degree path, and anything that you want to do, you can do through industrial engineering.
All right, that sounds really interesting. As I said, there are so many um, disciplines within engineering that sometimes students don't understand the nuances between the different types of engineering.
Yes.
So one of the things I want to go back to, as you were being accepted into North Carolina State,
Mhm.
read in your information that you actually were the recipient of several scholarships.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about those scholarships.
Yes. Well, the scholarship experience for me, it was great. Um, when I talk about the scholarships that I got, I do want your listeners, particularly the high school students that hear this, to understand that I applied for probably hundreds of scholarships, and I was fortunate to get a few. So one of the more significant ones that I got was the Goodnight Scholarship to NC State. And this is for students who are interested, students from North Carolina who are interested in studying a STEM or STEM education degree. So for students like me who wanted to study engineering, I could apply. And then also for students who want to become like science teachers or technology educators and things like that, could also apply. So this scholarship is a full ride scholarship that is offered to students. And throughout the program, each year we get to do several professional development activities. So we get mentorship from professionals in our fields. We get to learn several things that all college students and high school students need to know about professionalism, how to write an email, how to write a cover letter, things like that. Things that everyone thinks they know how to do well, but everyone could learn a bit more about it. So the Goodnight has definitely been a life-changing scholarship for me. And it's definitely given me the opportunity to really focus on my education when I was in school. So that's one. And then another significant one that I got is called the Coca-Cola Scholarship, and this was pretty much one of my crowning achievement, I feel like, in high school, because I had no idea how competitive the scholarship actually was. So they chose 150 students from across the country to receive the scholarship, and they had uh, lots and lots of applicants, and I felt really fortunate. We had, I think it was 3 rounds of interviews for the Coca-Cola scholarship, and when I finally got it, my hands were shaking. I didn't expect to actually get it. I mean, I just applied. I threw my hat in the ring, and fortunately, it worked out. And the Coca-Cola scholarship, it's not tied to my specific school, so it's not tied to NC State. So there, I was able to get into a network of people around the world. We have Coca-Cola Scholars meetups very frequently. There are activities offered all the time where we could network and do professional development together. So the Coca-Cola Scholarship has also been a very important scholarship for me in learning about how to network and how to use your community and those around you to get jobs and get careers and internships and things like that. So those are two of the more significant scholarships that I got.
Okay. And I loved what you said about the Coca-Cola scholarship and the opportunities to learn how to move in a professional setting,
Yes.
about networking, because I don't think young folks understand how important networking is, and that your networking can start very
Yes.
early, very
Yes.
early. So tell me so you did those type of activities with that. Tell me about what you do. What kinds of clubs and organizations have you belonged to as a student at NC State?
Yes. Well, as a student at NC State, I've been primarily involved in an organization I started myself in high school. And then I've started with myself and then three other classmates of mine in high school. And then we brought it to our college campuses. And that was originally it was called the Impact Education Foundation. And it was a nonprofit focused on providing educational support and resources like school supplies to lower income public schools in North Carolina. That was our initial focus. And then even today, we're still working on an iteration of it. We have since transformed it from the idea of how can we provide support by way of resources to now we focus on helping high school students specifically learn about their future opportunities. So throughout running Impact, we got to talk to a lot of high school students and we learned what they really wanted more than just school supplies like pencil and paper. What they really wanted was a greater sense of direction, especially from students like us who are in college. They wanted a sense of what is college like? What is college like as it compares to community college, as it compares to trade schools and things like that? So we've changed up the Impact Education Foundation now to an organization called You Embark, where we help high school students figure out how to choose what's next for them. So this has been my primary club and organization that I've been involved in at NC State. I've also been involved in the National Society for Black Engineers, which is an awesome organization that also gives us various networking opportunities and really helps us achieve a sense of identity, especially at a predominantly white institution like NC State. The National Society for Black Engineers has definitely given us a place to go and vent if we need to, but really have a sense of community on our campus. So those have been the two things that I've been most involved in.
That's really great. So tell me a little bit. How do students find out about your nonprofit? How do they find out about You Embark?
Yeah, so they can go to our website, uembark.org. And right now we're working on a mobile app that helps achieve our mission. So students, high school students will be able to download our mobile app where they will be able to look at different paths they can take after they graduate high school. And then they'll be able to watch videos of people who are at trade school, who are at a community college and things like that. And they'll be able to understand how different paths correlate to different career outcomes. So that's how they can find it.
Okay, that sounds really great. So how big is your foundation? How many folks are involved with that?
Yeah, so originally when we started Impact, we started with us four in high school, and then like I mentioned, we brought it to our campuses. NC State and UNC were two of the most prominent ones, and then we at our largest, we had a group of 17 college students across 7 campuses. And then once we decided to scale back and focus on a different mission, myself and my co-founder, Marcus Craw, who recently graduated from UNC Chapel Hill, we came together and really scaled back so that it's just us two focusing on the mobile app that we're developing now.
That sounds wonderful. For those of you that are just joining, we're talking with Jalen McGee, who is a senior at North Carolina State University, majoring in industrial and systems engineer. So if you know any students that are interested in this type of engineering, please make sure you share this out while we're watching it. Start a watch party. And also show us a little love out there to show that you're watching. And if you have any questions for Jalen, please put them in the comment section, or if you have some comments to make, please let us know that you're out there alive and well, and that you're listening. We really would appreciate that. So one of the organizations you mentioned was the National Society for Black Engineers. Tell me about some of the events or what have you that you had the opportunity to do with that organization.
Yeah, so one of the most significant events that you get to attend being in the National Society of Black Engineers is the annual convention, where companies from all across the country come, and it's basically a large career fair where you go and you get to learn about companies and you get to network with companies and recruiters from different companies who are looking to increase their pipeline of Black talent. So that is definitely one of the most significant things you get from being a part of NESB, that we call it. In addition to that, there are frequently companies who will come and have information sessions on campus where they'll set up a booth. They'll say, "Hey, National Society of Black Engineers, we want to get in contact with you and your members, and we'd like to really network and see what opportunities you may be interested in our company." So those have been the most significant events that I've been able to participate in as a result of being in NESB. So yeah.
Okay. So now, Nesby, did you join that as a student at NC State, or did you do that as a high school student?
I did that at NC State.
Okay. All right. So actually, I love that organization because one of my students who was actually going into his junior year at the University of Michigan in computer engineering joined. He joined the high school chapter, but then followed up at college.
Hmm.
And the same experience you're talking about, he went to their annual convention and ended up having these wonderful internships that are absolutely unbelievable. And and I was just like so taken with that because it was
Right.
wonderful. So I noticed when I was looking on your LinkedIn page that
Hmm.
you actually have had the opportunity to have some pretty nice internships. So tell us
Yeah.
a little bit about your internships.
Yes. So my very first internship when I was going to college was at a startup called Spiffy. And there I was a software engineering intern. And I was able to get that internship again through networking. One of my high school teachers had a connection with the company and she reached out on my behalf. And after I interned at Spiffy, I had a chance to intern at a company called Bandwidth in Raleigh. And the cool thing about Bandwidth and about NC State as well is that Bandwidth sat their headquarters on NC State's campus,
Oh,
which was amazing. And there are several other companies that have offices literally on NC State's campus. And that's exactly where Bandwidth was. And that's definitely one of the things that contributed to my being able to intern there. And at Bandwidth, I was a project management intern for their engineering and software teams. And I interned at Bandwidth as a sophomore, going into my junior year. And that was a pretty pivotal point for me because when I came in, I studied electrical and computer engineering for 2 years. And then halfway through, I actually switched majors to industrial and systems engineering. And one of the things that contributed to my decision to change majors was my internship at Bandwidth. I had an awesome experience. And what I was doing didn't have really anything to do with electrical and computer engineering. So I thought, hey, I really like what I'm doing here at Bandwidth. So I'm going to try and find a major that helps me get more in line so I can do this for my future career. And then after I interned at Bandwidth, my most recent internships this summer have been at Microsoft. Last summer, I was able to intern in Redmond, Washington, on Microsoft's campus, and this summer we had remote internships, so I did it from home. But my internships at Microsoft have definitely been some of the most transformative internships for me in terms of how I view a career, how I view work-life balance, how I view what it means to be successful, and things like that. So interning at Microsoft, and I've been intern as a product manager, which is how basically the business side of the technical work that the company does. And it's just been amazing for me to be able to see how Microsoft, a huge organization like Microsoft, does work and how they think about how work gets done and how employees should conduct themselves and how everyone should think, especially in a technology setting. So that's definitely been two of the most important internships for me, my ones at Microsoft.
all right. Those sound really great. So tell me about the coursework. So I know sometimes people think about going into engineering, not understanding the rigor of the curriculum.
Mhm.
So out of all the classes that you've taken, did any of them like challenge you to the point where you were like, wow?
Yeah, uh, I would say probably 90% of them challenged me to that point. Um, and I was absolutely one of the students. Like when I came into college, especially when I was intent on studying electrical engineering and did study it for 2 years, I had an idea of what it would be like, and it was not that. It didn't fit my idea at all. My most challenging class by far was chemistry when I was a freshman. And it was challenging, one, because I mean, chemistry, the subject is just challenging in itself. But for me, when I was a freshman in college, I didn't understand how to be a good student. I didn't understand what the right study strategies were for me. I didn't understand how many hours I would need to put in. I didn't understand how I thought of it as I could go to class, and in class, I could absorb the information, and then I'd be able to perform well. And that was not the case. I learned, and I'm still learning how to be a better student today, but I learned over time that when you go to class, at least in my case, when I went to class, what the professors were talking about in class, they were mainly telling us what to study outside of class. They weren't, it wasn't the intention for class to be the end all be all of this is what you need to retain. The professors were telling us, hey, these are the topics in the book or in your work that you need to focus on. You can't just absorb everything in class. That's what I really didn't understand about that and about all the other engineering classes that I've taken. So like I mentioned, chemistry was definitely my toughest, but really learning how to apply myself and learning how to think with engineering mindset. So they really focus on the engineering design process of everything being iterative, and you start and you go through a process once and you learn about what did and did not work, and then you go through it again. Really learning these kind of concepts were vital for me in understanding how to be a good student. So I definitely had some challenging classes, but those were some ways that I worked through it.
Okay. Again, for those of you that are just joining us, we're with Jalen McGee. And if you want to share this out with people, just have them go to Step to the Future's Facebook page, and you can see the live broadcast on there, and you can also comment on there. So one of the things you said, Jalen, that is so incredibly important was how to be a student.
Yeah.
I think sometimes, not all the times, but sometimes high school students think of the first year of college as the 13th grade, and it's not. It definitely isn't. And
Right.
as you talked about, when I think about how involved you were in school already, so you were a good student. You
Mm.
just realized that, okay, transitioning from a high school student to a college student is a whole different world.
Yes.
And it's so important for all you students out there that are either watching this now or you're going to watch this later, or parents that are watching it for them that are going to make them watch it later. So important that students understand about study skills, that they understand what Jalen just said about your college classes. The lecture is just kind of an introduction to the subject.
Right.
You're expected, like, I think it's like for every hour of class, you're supposed to do 3 hours of studying outside of class. So, folks, it's great that you go to class, but you've got to
Mhm.
put that extra work into it. So,
Right.
so in learning how to be a student,
Mhm.
were you able to, or did you access any of the support services that they had on campus, like tutoring services or anything?
All of them.
All of them?
When I took chemistry, they had a center called the University Tutorial Center, and those tutors knew me by name. Uh, I went in there probably every day because I mean, chemistry was just very tough for me. So I definitely used the tutors that they offered. I went to office hours, which is definitely a thing that I would recommend, not only for just getting an understanding of the material, but you get in your professor's face and they learn your name and they learn who you are. And that could come into play and that could help you out a bit when they're doing curving at the end of the semester. So I definitely went to tutoring a lot. I really utilized my professor's office hours. But one thing that I did that really helped me a bit more was I used to take my own exams. So I used to print exams that I would find on the internet for, I do this, I mean, still today, but especially for chemistry back then, I would print exams that I would find randomly, and I would sit down and take them like it was a real in-class exam. So it would be quiet. I would time myself, give myself 90 minutes, and I would just take the exam. So that really helped me get an understanding of like, how to take exams and be successful at it, because I realized one of the other things that I dealt with in freshman year was a bit of test anxiety, because I would start to take an exam and I start to sweat and I would look through the whole thing and I would say, I don't know this, I don't know this, I don't know this, I don't know this. And it was just, it would be a terrible experience. So I knew I had to get better, not only at like just learning the material, but figuring out how to take an exam in a way that would be productive and help me get good results. So those are some of the things that I use at school to really help myself.
That's fantastic that you have the initiative and the foresight to find similar exams
Hmm.
and, and then replicate the conditions and then
Hmm.
actually take the test. That's fantastic. We talk with our students now about if they're preparing for an SAT or ACT, which right now with COVID, they're
Hmm.
all over the place, but trying to get students to understand the importance of practicing
Yeah.
so you understand those types of questions, so you understand how to pace yourself while you're taking those exams. So I give you a lot of kudos for taking the initiative to get out there and do that. I don't
Thank
know
you.
any. I think you're the first college student that I've talked to that does that. Uh, maybe others, but you're the first one that I've heard that talked about that. So that actually is like absolutely fantastic.
Nice.
So so talk a little bit about what's going to happen after graduation.
Yeah, so I've been very fortunate to recently receive a return full-time offer from Microsoft. I intend on working there after graduation. We're still hammering out the details of the offer, but that's my intention. And I'll be working as an engineering product manager, similar to the internships I've been doing. And so yeah, that's my plan. So hopefully it'll go through.
That's fantastic. So will you be going out to the office out on the West Coast?
I've been fortunate. So one of the things I really, this will be a long way to answer your question,
That's
but
okay. Go right ahead.
the internship I did this summer was remote and I loved it. I felt like I was very productive, much more so than when I was in an office setting. I felt like I got things done faster. I felt like I was more efficient, and I really loved that I could like set up my desk and I could have my music going on. So one of the things that I asked for in my full-time offer was that I be remote, be able to be remote full time, and they granted it. So I'll be working remotely, but my team will be centered in Redmond.
That's fantastic. So students, see, this is how you set yourself up for success. You get an internship. Not only do you get the internship, but you provide such valuable service that when you're off at that position, you're able to negotiate some things that work in your favor.
Hmm.
Jalen would not have been able to do that if he had gone into that internship and hadn't proven himself as a valuable person that Microsoft knew would be a wonderful addition to their team.
Hmm.
So again, folks, you need to think about how you're presenting yourself when you're, whether it's a paid internship or unpaid internship, volunteer work, because people are paying attention
Hmm.
to how you do your work.
Hmm.
And one of the things I love that you talked about was how you learned about what working style worked best for you. So when working this summer remotely, you realize that for you, having that type of autonomy
Hmm.
allowed you to be more efficient, more productive. And of course, I'm sure Microsoft saw that. So when I had that request, they said, hey, we'd be kind of foolish if we didn't help this guy as best as we can.
Mm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what are you doing this semester? What classes are you taking? What kinds of projects besides your internship are you involved in?
Yeah, so this summer, or this semester rather, is my final semester. So I'm taking two courses, and this is technically this is my ninth semester. So when I switched from electrical engineering to industrial engineering, I had some additional classes to take, which gave me a ninth semester. So I'm only taking two classes that will round out my degree. But what I'm also putting significant time into is the app that I mentioned earlier, You Embark. My co-founder Marcus and I have been working pretty hard on getting it ready for launch. So that's what my most significant project right now is working on that. And then other than that, I'm taking two industrial engineering classes, one that's focused on manufacturing and one that's focused on simulations. So that's what I'm doing right now.
Okay, that sounds pretty cool. So when do you have a tentative launch date for your app?
There are too many variables right now. We don't have a launch date just yet, but we do plan for it to be in early 2021.
Okay.
So that's our plan, but there are a lot of variables in the works right now.
Okay, we'll definitely be on the lookout for that. So if you were to give some advice to a young person who's watching this, who's in high school, maybe ninth to 10th grade, and something that you said about industrial and systems engineering caught their attention, what
Mhm.
advice would you give to them as a high school student?
Yeah, that is a great question. What I tell them is learn how to reflect,
Mhm.
because this is something that I've never heard anyone, even any my tutors or my teachers, when they're talking about study skills, when I've heard people talk about how to get a career, I haven't heard anyone talk about reflecting on who you are, on what you're good at, on what you're not good at, and what you want to get better at, and what you're interested in. Because when you take the time to reflect and reflect often, you really get to learn who you are, and you get better in tune with like what do I want to do? And this is one thing, like I said, when I was doing my internship at Bandwidth, I really had to sit down and reflect about like what do I like about the internship that I'm doing now? What don't I like about it? What don't I like about the major that I was in, electrical engineering? And I had to understand what my strengths were and how I could play them best. So if I could give any piece of advice to a young person, is to learn how to reflect. A great way to do that is to journal. Every now and then, write down in a journal, this is what I'm good at, this is what I'd like to improve in, this is what I'm really interested in. And when you come to understand those things about yourself, it becomes a lot easier to choose the major that you want to go into, choose the job that you want to accept, choose the company that you want to work for, choose the activities that you want to do. It becomes a lot easier to just go through life and say yes to things that will serve you and say no to things that won't. So that's what I really tell young people to focus on. And it's not a perfect science. You'll never be like, I'm good at reflecting and I'm done. You always are getting better. You can have reflections about how you reflect, and you can learn how to get better at learning who you are and learning how to do that. So that's what I recommend for young people.
That is fantastic because one of the challenges I find with students as they're getting ready to write their personal statement for their college application, they haven't taken that time to do the self reflection.
Mhm.
They're not sure how to write this essay, which is really all about self reflection.
Right.
So they sometimes struggle with that piece because it's like, oh, we've never had to do this before, so I'm not quite sure how to do that. So I think that's like absolutely fantastic advice to give to students. So all you guys out there, especially my guys that I'm working with. So when I'm on you about getting this essay and writing a draft and saying I don't see enough of you in that essay, that's what I'm talking about. So listen to what this young man is telling you because it is some of the best advice that you're going to get from someone that's closer in age to you than I am. Definitely pay attention. So again, folks out there that are watching, if you have any questions or comments for Jalen, please throw them in there. Make sure you put in some emojis, show us a little bit of love out there, so we know that you're paying attention and that you're learning something new, because that's what this is all about.
Right.
Exposing people to something new, to different careers that are out there. Jalen talked a lot about the type of problems that he wants to solve and
Mhm.
how he's actually with working on this app, he's taking what he's learned and he's applying it to a need. So he saw a problem out there and he's working on doing something to solve the problem. And that helped, lead him to a change from electrical engineering to industrial and systems engineer. And I think that's so important because a lot of times when we talk to young folks, we say, oh, what do you want to major in?
Mhm.
Think we have that question wrong. It really should be just what you were talking about. What kind of problems do you want to solve? What is it that has you so interested that you could lose yourself in it all day? And I
Yeah.
think without that self reflection, that you have the opportunity to really think about that. And guys, it's never too early to do that self reflection. I mean, I'm sure that if you were journaling now during this COVID time, um, you'd learn a lot about yourself by what you're
Mhm.
putting on paper, by what you're putting on paper. Yes.
Right.
So tell me about, so one of the things that you did mention that I just want to back up on is you talked about office hours. Sometimes students don't understand what office hours are and the importance of them. So could you kind of expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. So office hours are basically FaceTime with your professor. That is, a lot of students think office hours are only for tutoring, but office hours can be for anything. I've been fortunate to be on several research teams throughout my time at NC State, and two of those opportunities that I got were by just going to a professor's office hours and talking to them and telling them my interests and learning about what their research is, if they're a research professor, and then really talking to them about what I'd like to do in my future. So that's one misconception about office hours is that it's only for tutoring. But when I have gone to office hours for tutoring, the professors have always been more than willing to sit down and work out a problem in depth.
Right.
And sometimes one thing that I really appreciate about office hours is you can kind of tease out some exam questions because sometimes in a lecture hall, a professor will go on and they'll just talk in a lecture and a lecture. But if you go to office hours, they'll say, this is how you do this is how you do this, and pay attention to this step because it will be on the exam. And then like you're getting insider information into how the exam is going to look. So what I really learned about professors and about going to office hours is they really just want to help. Professors are really interested. They really have your best interest at heart, even if you don't think they do. But they want you to take the initiative to show them that you care enough to get that kind of insider information, for example.
Wow.
So office hours are an amazing time. Not all professors will offer them. There will be some professors who don't have office hours and they leave it up to their TAs. But those professors, even in those instances, the TAs are very helpful as well, and will also take steps to say like, pay attention to this. This will be on the exam. This is very important. So that's how I would really sum up office hours. It's really a endless resource to insider information about the class, about what topics are important, and then even if you have a question, like for me, when I'm in class, sometimes I'll really wonder like, is this an important topic? And when you go to office hours, you can just straight up ask the professor, like, is this something that's really important? And they'll say yes, or they'll say no. And if they tell you, yes, this is an important topic, they'll even tell you this is important because it will be on the exam, or they'll tell you this is important because we're going to use this down the road in the class, and this is how the two connect. So they give you an understanding of like, okay, I should be paying attention to these different topics because down the line, they'll really come into play when we are focusing on something else. So that's
Okay. That is so important because I think that's one of the things that we talk about a lot with our students, but I don't think they quite get it. And I love what you said is about how this is, sometimes you can tease out what questions may be on the exam, but if the professors are looking for students to take the initiative, they're not waiting for, they're not going to come hunting you down for office hours. Guys, it's not like, you're at school and your school counselor is going to come looking for you to make sure you take care of things, or this knows you need some extra help before you take the exam. And they say, hey, you make sure you're in my room after school on such and such a day. This is up to you to go to office hours. And it sounds like that you utilize them to the fullest. So, I'm so glad that you mentioned that because, like I said, especially for first generation college students, if your family hasn't come from a college going background, there's never been this discussion about the importance of doing these types of things. And even sometimes if they have, people forget. I know my first year in college, I did not understand the importance of office hours. And it hurt. It showed. And if I could do it over again, those professors would never get rid of me because I would be in their office anytime I had a chance.
Right.
So one of the things you talked about in talking about office hours are the types of the research opportunities you had a chance to do.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I've had various research experience, and I'll go in order of the one of them. My first one was very odd. It was research in in an electrical engineering lab where I was working with cockroaches.
Ooh.
And basically, what we were doing, we were putting electronic backpacks on these cockroaches. The end goal was to see if these cockroaches could be deployed in catastrophic situations where where there's a lot of rubble. See if cockroaches could go out and find bodies or find other debris that that we want them to find. So that was the long-term goal of the project. And what I was able to really understand through doing that is how varied electrical engineering is. Like that in electrical engineering, I mean, it's a very interesting major, even though I chose not to pursue it after sophomore year, but I really got to understand that, I mean, if you want to do something in like deep technology, electrical engineering is definitely the way to go for you. And I got to interact with PhD students, master students, and I got to ask them questions as well, which is a great thing that comes out of being on research teams. So my first research opportunity was with the cockroaches. And then after that, I got a chance to switch gears and study research in a plant biology lab, where we were working with basically building an app or a web application for plant biology professors to learn how to tell different cell properties within plants. So that was a much different experience. But after that, I got a chance. Now the research lab that I'm involved with is about really manufacturing and about software. So I'm doing a lot of software programming in this current research role that I'm in. So those have been my 3 research experiences.
That's absolutely fantastic. I don't know about the cockroaches. But who knew that? That's so interesting. Though what you said about it is trying to see whether or not cockroaches could be deployed to help people. And like most of us, react like me, a cockroach. So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. So we have a question from one of our viewers. So what was your interest in math in high school, and did you have a natural inclination for your math class?
Yes, I did. I had a I've always been interested in math. I love math. And like I mentioned earlier, the reason that I initially got into engineering was because of one of my teachers when I was in middle school. I was good at math, and she said you should consider engineering. So throughout high school, I took calculus, statistics, I took physics and computer programming, which all had heavy math in it. But what I would say, even though I felt like I had a natural inclination for math, you don't have to have that to be an engineering student. It's all about what you're interested in. So if you're interested in being an engineering student, whether you feel like you have a natural inclination for math or not, you can be an engineering student. But for me, I love math. I still love math today. I love it because there's always a concrete answer. Sometimes I took a philosophy class and there were like so many different ways to think about the same thing. And it was really interesting, but there was like, it was hard to get a concrete answer. But with math, what I love is like, you're right or you're wrong. And if you're wrong, you can trace back and see exactly where you messed up and correct it. So yeah, I had a natural inclination for math, let's say.
Okay, thank you for that. So thank you for asking that question. Definitely appreciate that. And for those who are just joining in, this is Jalen McGee, who is a student at North Carolina State University in Industrial and Systems Engineering, and he will be graduating this December and has a pretty solid job offer from Microsoft. So this is absolutely fantastic. Um, this is, I just think it's so important for young folks to hear from other young folks who have gone on the type of journey that you've gone on so that they can see the possibilities in themselves and they can see what might be open for them in their future. And having that information is so good because I think sometimes that's what holds some students back. It's just the lack of information,
Yeah.
not having enough information or the right information. And you're welcome. Our viewers said thank you for your answer. She definitely appreciated it. So thank you for asking that question. And again, anyone else out there that has questions, please, make sure you throw it in the chat. So one of the things I like to do before we wrap up is I always like to highlight a book that that goes along with whatever the person is doing. So this week's book is called How She Discovered Engineering. And it actually highlights probably about 8 to 9 women who are in different fields of engineering. It's by Diane Propsner. And Diane does a lot of work on women in STEM. And this particular one, she's focusing on women in engineering. So I thought this would be a great book to showcase this evening, seeing as we have a engineer in our midst. And that would be. So this is the book, guys. So check it out. I know it's on Amazon. So do check it out. So Jalen, what last bit of information would you give to students about whether it's about networking, getting a mentor, joining organizations? What last bit of information would you like to leave students with?
That's a great question. Well, one of the most important things that I didn't mention that you kind of touched on a bit that I think is really important for students to think about is think about what you don't mind thinking about when you don't have to. So for me, when I was thinking about what major to go into, when I was thinking about like what college to attend, and now I'm thinking about what job opportunity to take, I'm really thinking about what don't I mind thinking about in my free time. Like when I was in electrical engineering, when I was in that major, I would sometimes not want to go to class because I knew I would have to think so hard about circuitry and electrons and all this stuff. And I definitely did not want to think about electrical engineering in my free time. So what I would caution students to do is really think about what topics do you think about in your free time? What don't you mind like spending time that you don't have to spend on. So I'd say that would be my biggest piece of advice about like college in general. I know this doesn't pertain to networking or the other topics that you mentioned, but I think this is a very important thing for students to think about, because a lot of times it's not our potential majors aren't framed by the lens of like what don't you mind thinking about in your free time. It's more like, what are you interested in? And we have several interests, but like in order to have a successful college experience or a successful work experience, you need to be doing things that you don't mind thinking about outside of when you're supposed to do it. So that's be my last piece of advice that I'd say.
That is absolutely fantastic, Jalen, because I'm just thinking as an adult, um, we go to work and we're at work for so many hours a day. And if you're at work and feeling like it's a drudge and, oh man, I got to get up and go do this again, then of course, then it becomes a job.
Right.
It just becomes a job. I love what you said about what are you thinking about in your free time when you don't have to be thinking about it. That's absolutely amazing. I mean, I think that's how I feel about the work I do. Like my husband was saying to me, "Oh my God, every time I turn around, you're talking about college, you're talking about something about it."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, that's what I love.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what I love. I love, okay, if I learn this, how can I help another student?
Yeah.
If I find out this information about this college, ooh, this might help this student. Um, Having you on, this is going to help students learn more about engineering from a student's perspective.
Hmm.
And I think that advice is absolutely wonderful. I have to really quick shout out to Wesley Wade for referring Jalen to me for an interview. Wesley, thank you so much. This young man is absolutely fabulous, just as fabulous as you said he would be. Um, and definitely somebody we're going to be keeping our eye on, because I have a feeling you're going to be out there doing some absolutely fabulous things, and everyone's going to know your name one way
Thank you.
or another. And I just, and I'm going to be looking forward to that app sometime next year. So I
Yes.
can pass that on to students that I know that would definitely benefit from it. And
Mhm.
I just love how you're taking what you're learning and applying it to a problem that needs an answer.
Yeah.
So that is so good. I definitely I feel blessed to have had this opportunity to talk to you. I know your parents are definitely proud of you and other family members, because you're definitely going to be going places. You're doing things. You're a fantastic student. You're going to be a wonderful engineer. Microsoft has already decided that you're going to be a great asset to their company.
Mm.
So I thank you so much for being with us this evening. For folks that joined in or folks that are watching this later, please make sure that you pay attention and know that name, Jalen McGee, because we're going to see it again. That next big Microsoft development might have his name attached to it. I knew him when. So folks, pay attention, do your studying. Jalen, thank you so much for taking the time out of your crazy day, busy day, full day to have this conversation with me. So this was Jalen McGee, College Conversation. So you want to be an engineer. Folks, thank you so much for joining in. We'll be here next Monday evening with Terry Thomas, and that will be about So You Want to Be an Executive Director. So Terry will tell us a little bit about her work, and she's actually an alum of North Carolina State too, Jalen.
Oh, wow. Nice.
So yeah, her degree was in economics and I think business management. So,
Nice.
so she'll be on next week to talk to us. So folks, again, thank you so much, and please make sure shout out to Jalen. Jalen, so folks, what's going to happen is I will put the show notes on sometime tonight, and then I will also have this video up on my YouTube channel, so that if you don't get to watch it on Facebook, you can see the replay on YouTube and definitely share it out with people. Jalen, stay on when I end this broadcast. So folks, again, see you next Monday evening. This is Dr. B from Steps to the Future, thanking you for joining us for another college conversation, and see you all next week.
Nice.